So my life story, I'm trying to put into a book format. That way it's easier for people to read than hear my fucked up voice. When when hearing this, keep this in mind that it's better to read it. You could put a filter on to change the voice. You could also have it written down so that you can read this instead of hearing it from me. I realize that my voice is funny and that I stutter and some of my words don't come out right. Now, one of the highlights that I wanted to make sure that people understand is when you're getting money to take care of a child, what happens when you don't do so. I'll give you an example. I was living in a program in Haverhill with kids that were orphans. They had no parents, they had nobody taking care of them, they never were adopted, and they went through the foster care and program system. I was living with them for many years, 2 years, maybe more. During these 2 years, maybe more, every single month, they would round up all the kids, give them all an envelope. The kids would open the envelope, pull out a check with their name on it, and it would be for $300. The kids would come up and show me these checks. They would all get in a van and they would go to the mall and they would go shopping. They would pick up sweaters, shirts, underwear, socks, everything that they needed. Now, I was left by myself, and they told me I was not allowed to leave my room, and this could take up to 4 hours. These kids had a good time doing it. This was their time out. They got to have fun. That they all looked forward to this every single month. Everybody but me. I used to cry in bed, wondering why all these other kids got to have nice clothing and I was wearing rags. I never understood that. I had holes in my clothing, too large, my socks were no good. And when I did finally once a year go shopping with my family, we might spend $50 to $100 on something like jeans. And the more I spent, my father would give a look like he was upset. Meanwhile, my mother would try to push me to buy stuff just to get him upset some more, and I couldn't understand what all this was about. It's very obvious you guys do not want me buying clothing, because when I call every month asking you to bring me out or allow me to go with these other children, you tell me no. So I have no idea what's going on. Now, later in life, I found out my father was receiving a Social Security check in my name that was meant for these things: clothing, shelter, food. I found this out later after it was ending because he refused to turn it over to me or let me know about it until the letter came in the mail that it was ending. That's when he finally opened up after it was already over and done with. But anyway, so all these other children would go out, have a good time, get their clothing for 4 hours or more, come back home all happy, all charged up, and the staff would tell them they're not allowed to give me any of the clothing because it's from the state. That's their funding for their clothing. And when I would ask, why can't I get any clothing? Why only me? Why am I the only kid wearing rags? The staff would tell me, ask your parents. So I would do that. I would ask my parents why I'm the only child that doesn't get clothing. Why do I have to trade tobacco for bright orange, extra, extra, extra large sweaters just to stay warm? Why can't I go out and have this clothing fun with all the other kids? Why aren't you bringing me out every month to go on these clothing? When I asked them, I expected them to bring me out every month and do what these people were doing. These kids were going out every month, getting clothing, having a good time, while I'm crying in my room. Every month for years. And you know what my father's answer was? They can't be getting that much. And then he would walk away from me. That's it. He wouldn't come up with a date to bring me clothing shopping. He wouldn't try to work it out with the program and give them maybe $100 a month for me to go clothing shopping. No, not at all. He worked out nothing. He decided to keep that money and use it towards his apartment, house, or maybe to something my mother wanted for me, like to up my pills or bring me to Boston for some special doctor she liked that would drug me, or maybe to help cover up her mistake a little more. I mean, the programs continued all the way until I was adult. I didn't get out of them. I begged and begged to come home. My behavior was improving at the programs, even though I was getting beat up, strangled for it. the more well-behaved I acted, the more these kids would torture me. And the more I acted up, the worse I would get punished at home or by my parents. So there was no win for this. It was a lose-lose situation. But as an adult, I found out that it was greed that got in the way of this. It was greed. There was a check that was meant for my clothing. These other children were going out every month getting clothing, except for me. I had to wait years and years and trade cigarettes for clothing. That's wrong. And if people can't accept that that's wrong, then we have a problem in society. And this should have been discussed a long time ago, and something should have been worked out. And I called month after month asking about this, and I didn't find out until 5 years later. I had no idea why I was being treated like this, why every single month I was stuck by myself, not allowed to leave my room, twiddling my thumbs, and every other kid got to spend hours and hours shopping, and they each got their own check but me. I'm the only child without a check. I'm the only child who's not going clothing shopping. I'm the only child who doesn't have this fun. And my father could have brought me out once a month to spend $100, and that still would have been less than any of these other children. But I know there was nothing like that happening with me. Yes, I did get clothing shopping, but it wasn't like that at all. It was once a year. It was a couple pair of jeans, a couple shirts. Maybe they picked something up at Costco during Christmas. That's it. It was never, ever enough to get me through these programs. Not at all. These pants would get torn. I would look dirty. I'd be wearing sweaters that are too big. And all they had to do was give the program the money to allow me to get clothing. That's all. If they didn't want to do it themselves, if my parents did not want to bring me clothing shopping on a regular basis so I had the clothing to wear, then they could have given some to the program in a check form, and I could have gone out with these other children. But that did not happen. Why? Because the money was already being used for housing that I didn't live in. And that was the plan all along. That's one reason why my mother could not admit that something went on. Because she was making me disabled to help with the finances. If I was shown to be intelligent, capable, that might hurt their chances of keeping Social Security going. As well as her making me disabled was the reason. I mean, there were so many hints and red flags to this that it should have been apparent to the state right away. But it wasn't, because I was being moved around from state to state to state. In my whole life, the longest I ever spent in one place is the place I built for myself. And that's here in New Hampshire. I've been here for 7 years, and that's because I built this place. I paid for it. I got it together. I did everything. And I even had to pay for my roommate's mistakes constantly to keep it going. He borrows money from somebody. Oops, I can't pay it back. I can't pay the rent. I come to the rescue and pay any and all expenses. That's me, my hard work. Before that, I don't think I stayed in one place for more than 2 years. Every year to 2 years, I was trafficked to a new location. Keep that in mind if you're trying to raise or adopt. If you're adopting a child, if you're taking the responsibility of raising a child, then you need to do it, because the state no longer will do the job that they were doing. The state normally gives money to these children that get clothing. They have people to investigate and listen to these children. If something is happening to these children, there's a whole process to fix it. But if you have parents, it's up to the parents to do a good job. And if the parents are disabling their child and they're trying to save as much money as possible on that child, things can go wrong. Keep that in mind when reading my book.